Welcome to a new time. Welcome to a new era.
This ain't WCW. This ain't Monday Night Raw. This ain't SmackDown. This ain't even WWE.
Feel the wrath of the pythons. You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania. This is where the power lies.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family.
I got a 66 and 2/3 chance of winning because Kurt Angle knows he can't beat me and he's not even going to try.
It's time to step into the squared circle and get it done.
Welcome everyone to Legends and Champions, coming to you this week, wherever you are listening in podcast world. Andy Evans here, back after a 1 week break. More on that in just a second. What have we got coming up this week? Well, this one is slightly different because we're bringing back an old friend from the TSC era. This is Ask Us Anything, and it's going to be done by the confines of that wonderful little thing called AI. This time using Gemini, Google's AI assistant. I used ChatGPT last time. Let's see how this one does. This is the first of a couple of parters, because what we're going to be doing is kicking it off this week, and then hopefully in a couple of weeks I'm going to have some of Team MOW on to ask them some questions and get their take on the old school era of professional wrestling. It is the Christmas season. The countdown is on. We are on our way to the big fat jolly man coming down our chimneys full of presents. Hope you get everything you're looking for. One of the presents that we did have this past weekend, though, was the Survivor Series that took place in Vancouver, British Columbia. What did everybody think? I know Mike talked about it on Sunday. The ACT guys are going to talk about it this week. I think for me, it was interesting. It was all right. It wasn't brilliant. There's nothing that I could really take home about it. I think we're all expecting The Rock to arrive, and of course The Rock no-showed because The Rock is in Moana 2. But there we go. Other thing, I want to quickly touch on something, right? And that is, well, let's save it for the show. But now it's time for a very special segment.
He'll make it sweet. He'll make it short. It's time for Andy's Weather Report.
Yeah. Joe. Thank you, Joe. The wonderful Joe Aguinaldo there, ladies and gentlemen. Give him a big... this would have been much better if I could have got this done. Give him a big... oh, no, didn't work. I was going to give him a big round of applause, but it didn't. Oh, there we go. That's what you get when you've got a soundboard. Joe with the weather report there. Since I last did a show, which was Survivor Series 1997, we've had snow. Ladies and gentlemen, I got caught in a snowstorm. I was in a town called Exeter, and I was completely snowed in the hotel. It was brilliant. Don't get snowed this side of the UK, down these woods in the southwest near the beach. I know in Canada you're struggling with the snow, so I hope typical winter season for you guys is okay and you're managing. All right, let's do it, shall we? Let's crack on with the show. We're going to go for a quick break. When we come back, let's kick off with some Ask Us Anything, courtesy of Gemini AI. See you after this.
Hey, yo, how many of you here came to listen to your same generic wrestling podcast? Or how many of you came to listen to the alternate commentary table every single Saturday?
You're going to get our perspective of what the real fans of wrestling think, and no one does it like us.
Subscribe and stream to the McGuire on Wrestling podcast feed anywhere where you're streaming your podcasts. Survey says one more for the Greek guys.
Chair shot!
All right, welcome back to Legends and Champions. Let's kick it off with Ask Us Anything. But before we do that, massive congratulations to Mitch and his lovely wife and family for the arrival of their son. From all of us here at Legends of, I say all of us, it makes it sound grander than what it is. From me and my family to you, congratulations. Hope everything is fine. Enjoy this time and have a fantastic Christmas with your new family. I genuinely wish you all the best. For those of you who don't know Mitch, I don't know him very well, nor Dimitri. We're in obviously the Team MOW chat. Both those guys from ACT are two of the genuinely nicest fellas you could ever meet. And Mitch, yeah, is an absolute legend. So congratulations, Mitch. Congratulations to your wife and your family. Enjoy it. I remember back to those days. I've now got a 6-year-old. She drives me up the wall. She's more like a diva. She asked for a Facebook account the other day. She said, Daddy, can I have a Facebook account? I went, no, you can't have a Facebook. She went, Daddy, can I have a TikTok account? I went, no, you can't have an account. She went, Daddy, can I have a YouTube account? I want a blog. I went, yeah, of course you can. No, I didn't. She's a blogger. She likes recording vlogs on my phone, right? How the hell she learnt this, I don't know. It's not like she's ever around when I record a podcast, but my 6-year-old records vlogs, and she does it well, right? It's like, welcome back, fans. I don't know where she's hearing it from, but she's tremendous. But anyway, a bit of a sidebar. Congratulations. Hope it goes well. Right, how does this work? So, I have asked AI to give me 100 questions based on the theme of retro professional wrestling. The questions can cover anything from the 80s through to the 2010s and be based on all of the major promotions. So WWE, WCW, ECW, and TNA. I have not seen these questions, and using a randomizer, I have picked 10 questions to discuss. Now, this could be a really short show, it could be a really long show. There is no format for this. All right, let's kick it off. The first question is all about Hulkamania. Was Hulk Hogan truly the biggest star in wrestling history, or is his impact overstated? This is an interesting question. Why is it an interesting question? Because if you ask Hulk Hogan, he will say, I am the biggest celebrity, the biggest personality in professional wrestling. Professional wrestling wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan. And I think that in the 1980s, there is a case to that. There is an argument for that. Because when you look at the confines and the battle lines between the World Wrestling Federation and the NWA/WCW, it was all about the WWF. We talked about it in 1994 show about how business was on the decline because those recognized superstars like the Macho Man Randy Savage, like Hulk Hogan, had left and gone to WCW. And the new generation, the guys like the Hitman Bret Hart, the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, couldn't quite get the crowd's intrigue or get people buying at the merchandise stand. So in the 1980s, absolutely. But I think that when you look at where we are now in terms of mainstream professional wrestling, and when you look at how the sport has developed over the years, the argument is there for him not to be the biggest star. And that then opens up another question. Who is? Because how do you define the truly biggest star in wrestling history? Because an argument would be The Rock. He has transcended sports entertainment. He is one of the most highly sought after actors. He's also on the board of directors at TKO. He is quite possibly the most powerful person in professional wrestling. John Cena could be the biggest star for crossover for potential, for match quality, for buy rates. Stone Cold Steve Austin, same. Batista, same. Maybe not for buy rates, but definitely for that crossover appeal to the entertainment, the wider entertainment pop culture genre. So, was Hulk Hogan truly the biggest star? No. But it really does depend on how you're looking at it. I think, quite personally, the biggest problem with Hulk Hogan is the fact that the biggest problem with Hulk Hogan is Hulk Hogan. I think Hulk has kind of ridden this wave of popularity for over 40 years now, and he's believing the hype. right? He's the Ric Flair, and we talked about this before, where Ric Flair doesn't know the difference between, Richard Flair and Ric Flair, the character to the man, and I think that's Hulk Hogan. Hogan's got an ability to rewrite history. He went to the Vince McMahon School of Wrestling History. So I think there's definitely, if you look at the Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling, he's on there. But to say he's the biggest star, I don't agree with that. I don't think he is. But I also think it's very subjective. I don't think one person is right. Mike's answer would be completely different to this. Mitch, Dimitri, Joe, we all will have different thoughts on who we think is the biggest wrestling star. He's up there. He's in the top 5. He's not the number 1. All right, that's the first one. Christ, if they're all going to be like this, we're going to be here for a while. Okay, what have we got coming up next? All right. Okay. The emergence of TNA. Did TNA ever truly live up to its potential, and why? Now, this is quite interesting because on our Team MOW Facebook page, there was a post up there saying, why don't you cover TNA? Why don't you do this? It's the number 2 promotion in the US at the moment. Why do you not cover it? And Mike came out with a really, quantifiable post, which basically said, we do, but when we try and put it on the Facebook group, we don't get the engagement. TNA is an interesting concept because if we go back to the rise and fall of TNA show that we did a few weeks ago, they definitely have the potential to be up there. I think bad business decisions, bad booking, bad talent acquisition, that hurt the company. I think the slotting around in different time slots, not knowing where you were and kind of relying on this wrestling audience to find you, I think that hurt TNA. I also think at the time, TNA was released too early. I think if TNA came out now, and I mean fresh, right? I mean with Anthem behind them, but in today's culture, and it hadn't had a history of TNA, do you know what? I think it could, because they were very good, and they are very good at utilizing social media. They are very good at using YouTube. They are very good at creating TikTok. They are very good at sharing content. And I think the TNA Plus app, which I'm using at the moment actually, is fantastic. The library is there. So I think now, yes, they could if they came out now. I think back in the day, coming out and trying that out-of-the-box concept of doing the pay-per-view weekly, that didn't work, and I think that affected them because actually the business plan was flawed. And you were going up against the juggernaut of the WWF, right? It was only a year after WCW had gone under. It was a year after ECW had gone under. A lot of these guys associated with the failure of that company. A lot of the big talent had been signed by WWE at the closure of WCW and ECW. And I think that hurt them. I think they needed some massive star power to kind of kick it off and not rely on the likes of Scott Hall or Kevin Nash. Nothing wrong with those guys, big names. But you wanted somebody different to come in. And I think when they signed Kurt Angle and when they signed Sting, that did give them the ability to kind of grow. But I don't think it ever lived up to its potential. And it's a shame. I think that Jarrett tried. Jeff is a tremendous mind when it comes to this business. And we all see that, if you listen to the My World podcast, I've spoken to Jeff, I've interviewed him a couple of times, and his mind, you could just see it ticking when I was asking him questions about creative. And I think that, if they'd had better backing financially from the beginning, they had the star power from day one, they had the TV deal from day one, they could have been a competitor. And what they wanted to do is be the alternative, is what AEW wanted to do. But I think the problem with that is you need to have a sound business model, a sound business strategy for 5 years, the short, the medium, the long-term growth. And they didn't have that. And I think with the constant battle around, are we going to be here next week? That affected them. When Dixie came in, when Panda came in, Dixie didn't have a clue. She had her own idea of what was going to happen with TNA. That hurt it. There was a lot of bad mistakes. which affected it, and I hope they turn it around, because personally I love TNA. I always have done. I always have loved TNA. It's been some of the best live events here in the UK that I've ever been to. Yeah, there we go. Okay, what we got coming up? What's next? What's next? All right. What were your favorite wrestling toys and merchandise? That's an interesting one. My favorite wrestling toy were back in the 80s. It was those wrestling buddies. Do you remember those? The ones that, like the Macho Man Randy Savage, the Hulk Hogan one, the Ultimate Warrior one. And they weren't very big, but you could bash them, you could beat them, you could body slam them. And being a youngster watching the WWF at that time, it was brilliant because you used to try and reenact it on your bed, in your bedroom. And, they were just great toys to have. The other thing that I remember getting from QVC, the shopping channel, which I think you guys got it in North America and Canada, but we have it over here, was the Bop Attack. And I wish I could find one of these now. So the Bop Attack was a big blow-up, inflatable sort of cone type thing. And on it, we had a superstar. So I think mine had the Big Boss Man. And what you did was every time you bashed it, it bopped down and bopped straight back up again. It was brilliant. It was just a really, basic 80s toys, right? But it was just tremendous. What other merchandise? I didn't really collect it. I didn't really collect wrestling merchandise growing up. I was more of a fan watching it in the magazines and things like that. I did have those wrestling toys. I did have a squared circle, like one of the original Hasbro squared circle rings and some characters. But my friend Lee, who some of you will know from TSC before now, he had a project where he bought a Hasbro wrestling ring that was in really bad condition, and he redid it. He stripped it back, repainted it, got new ring ropes, did the new the posts, completely painted everything, got all new stickers, and then got a load of the old 80s, JLS toys. And what he did was absolutely amazing. I'll try and see if I can get a photo of it and send it over and put it on the Team MOW Facebook page. But it was brilliant. I'd love to hear what your favourite toys were from back in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and the early noughties, because I think wrestling is kind of tied into the action figure market, a bit like Action Force, G.I. Joe, and He-Man from the 1980s. That was more of what I collected back then, was He-Man and the Thundercats and the Transformers and all that type of thing. Not really wrestling. But I'd love to see your collections. I'd love to know what you had. What were your favourite wrestling toys and merchandise? Let us know on Team MOW on Facebook. Okay. What else do we have? All right. Discuss the evolution of women's wrestling in the WWE. I think women's wrestling right now is possibly the best it's ever been. And that's going to give me some heat. And I know it's going to give me some heat, because if you go back to when they did the Evolution pay-per-view, you obviously had Trish, you had Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné, you had Lita, you had all of those guys there. And they were putting on some really great matches. If you look at Alexa Bliss, if you look at Mercedes Moné, if you look at Charlotte Flair, if you look at Becky Lynch. But I still don't think it was quite there. I think now, when you look at Liv Morgan, the character of Liv Morgan, you look at the character of Rhea Ripley, you look at the character of Bianca Belair, you look at some of the work they're doing in NXT, you look at Kaden Carter, you look at Candice LeRae, you look at Tiffany Stratton, who is the breakout, in my opinion, female performer of 2024. She is up there, and she's ready for that main event. When you look at what they're doing in NXT in terms of the women, I think we're in the best place now for women's wrestling in the World Wrestling Federation, in WWE, than we've been forever. And I know that's not really touching on the retro side. But what we got to think about is today's characters are the ones that are also going to become the legends going forward. And I think that there is definitely scope for another women's only pay-per-view. I would go as far as to say that actually, with this Netflix era that's coming in January, that there is an argument there for a women's brand. And I don't mean you take them off Raw and SmackDown completely, but I do think that a Women of WWE brand now could work. I think you've got some great talent, as we've just said. I think you've got some great talent in the NXT brand. I think that with WWE ID, where they're bringing in independent sensations, and they've already started that with, I can't remember her name, but she was in AEW, and she was at Maple Leaf. Oh, hell, what's her name? It'll come back to me. She's been signed. I think that the plan for Triple H, who's always been an advocate of women's wrestling, has got to be to continue the evolution of that. And I think a women's brand on Netflix, which doesn't have any limits, would be the right thing to do. What a way to get more eyes on women's wrestling than by doing it on Netflix. It's the best time. I think we need a women's pay-per-view. I think we need a women's brand. I don't necessarily agree, however, with the introduction of the Women's Intercontinental Championship. Unless they're going down this brand route. Because otherwise you're introducing a title for the sake of the title. There's still too many titles in professional wrestling. Do you need another one? If it's another brand, I'm all for it. If it's just because it's going to be slotted into Raw and SmackDown, then no, get rid of it. Alright, okay. What if WCW had never gone out of business? Okay. Alright, okay. What if WCW had never gone out of business? I think you've got to take that one further. I think you've got to go further back in time for that. If WCW hadn't started to go downhill when the WWF started winning, so from the beginning of the Attitude Era, from WrestleMania 14 with Mike Tyson, if they hadn't started putting on a bit of a lackluster product and they were still continuing to dominate, then the actual scenario that you want to look at is, what if the WWF had closed? Because I think WCW, with the money of AOL Time Warner or AOL Discovery or whatever they're called now, or back in the day, I think they could have continued to have really run ramshot over the wrestling industry. And I think that actually there would be a whole new landscape. I think WCW would still be around. I think the WWF would have closed doors. I think that some of the performers that we know and love, like the John Cenas, like the AJ Styles, like the Randy Ortons, we wouldn't see them now. AEW wouldn't be a thing because we know Tony Khan is a massive lover of the story of WCW. He may not like Eric Bischoff, different story. But WCW was more instrumental in wrestling than we ever give it credit for, and so was Eric Bischoff. And I think the landscape would be totally different. I think Goldberg would be the legend that we all talk about. I think there's some younger talent that could have worked in WCW at that time, but they needed to get their business model right. They needed to carry on putting out good shows in 98, 99. They needed to not hire Vince Russo. That would have helped. They needed to not get complacent in terms of what they were doing, and they needed to hire right and do the right stories. And the problem with it is you never get lightning in a bottle twice. So the NWO, that was the big thing that got WCW on the map, was because it was fresh, it was unique, it was different. It was going against the cartoon storytelling of the WWF. And we've seen that when the WWF tried to redo that back in 2002 at No Way Out, that didn't work, right? You can't get lightning on a bottle. So I think they needed to constantly have a very good creative team, very good marketing team, better rights distribution globally, and get the product out to an international market live, not relying on tape delay. Then I think we could have seen a whole new era, a whole new level of professional wrestling. All right, let's go to a break. When we come back, more of Ask Us Anything. We'll see.
If you like McGuire on Wrestling, you need to subscribe to the free McGuire on Wrestling podcast feed. Not only do you get access to the show a day early, but you also get free bonus content every week. Share a laugh with Mitch and Dimitri on the alternate commentary table.
Oh, I'm Cody Brown. Look at me.
Now, if this was Damian Priest, he'd apologize.
He probably would have apologized.
Follow along with the film career of one of wrestling's biggest stars with We've Seen a Movie.
Basically, I'm just watching John Cena play his wrestling character.
If John Cena was a raging alcoholic, Atlantic City mooched before this.
Get all these shows, exclusive interviews, and more for free by subscribing to McGuire on Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back with more Ask Us Anything right here on the Legends and Champions podcast. Interesting where we've been so far. So we've talked about Hulk Hogan, we've talked about WCW, we've talked about this, we've talked about that. We're going to carry it on with a question that's literally popped up next in the list, and it is quite fitting. How will the rise of streaming services impact the wrestling landscape? Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? January 6th on Netflix in the US and worldwide. You know, I'm not against it. I know a lot of people are, and not just on Team MOW, but across the entire wrestling community, are really beginning to have a bit of a bum squeak regarding WWE going to Netflix following the Tyson Jake Paul fight. All right, this is my 10 cents on this, for what it's worth, okay? We will never get the audience for the WWE that Paul Tyson got. Never going to happen, right? Netflix are investing too much money in the WWE for this not to work. The WWE have got too much riding on this for this not to work. My only concern with this going to Netflix is the loss of the retro content. And that's purely selfish because I need it for the show. But I've got it, so I'm not overly worried. But I hope that they don't get rid of the history, because that is our history. That's our wrestling lineage. I'm concerned about the interface on Netflix. The one thing about the WWE Network, you know where it all is. It might be the crappiest layout ever in a streaming service since they upgraded it, but it's all there, right? I'm worried with Netflix. You're going to lose stuff or not know it's there. But from a global reach, what an opportunity. What an opportunity for wrestling to finally get the mainstream recognition that it deserves. For wrestling to finally be on the same stage as some of the biggest network shows in history. And let's take this into account. Linear broadcasting is dying. It's dying a death, right? It's all going streaming. Over here, we've launched a new service called Freely, which comes with TVs. And basically, it's saying, you don't need an aerial. You don't need an aerial or a satellite dish. You can watch everything on this TV using a Wi-Fi connection. Smart TVs, apps, all that type of thing is here ready. The ability to consume content anywhere, anytime, any location, anywhere in the world means finally you're not going to miss it. It's a great potential. And I really don't agree or don't understand why fans are dissing it so much. Oh, I'm not going to follow the WWE anymore because they've gone to Netflix, and I'm going to cancel this. And okay, bye. Why? Why are you saying this? Why are you acting in this way? Because what's the impact going to be? You're most likely a Netflix subscriber. You know, 1 in 3 people, I think the stat is, has a Netflix subscription, has access to Netflix. And that is most likely totally wrong, what I've just said. I can't remember the stat. But it's a great stat. It's in your house. I've got 3 TVs in this house, 2 iPads, 3 iPhones, all of which have got Netflix. I go away with work pretty much weekly and stay in a hotel, of which I can access Netflix. So I'm never going to miss WWE again. Because when I was doing a standard show, a show like MOW, a show like ACT, my biggest problem was keeping up with the content. But with Netflix, I can dip in and out. I can watch it what I want. You know, if I want to watch it 20 minutes after, you know, it airs on Netflix, most likely I can. If I want to watch it whilst I'm having my Weetabix in the morning, I most likely can. This is the freedom. The fact that, you know, I love the network. I thought the network was brilliant. I was against it when it first came out because it's like, oh, bloody hell, $9.99. But actually, it's been the one service that I've continuously kept, because it's just been, you know, you're a bit down or whatever. What do? You put on your favourite match and it picks you up. The interface, as I said earlier on, yeah, was shocking, but it was still there. So, I don't know. I think that people kind of saying they're going to bypass the WWE or whatever, a very limited mindset. To go back to the question, because I realise I've gone off on a tangent, which is not unusual for me, this is where it's going. Streaming is where it's going, right? We're seeing that. AEW is on Max. I've already mentioned TNA Plus. TNA are already on their own OTT platform. And if you want to be in this business, if you want to be in this market, if you want to generate revenue, if you want to get a fan appeal, if you want to get your product out there, if you want to get your superstars out there, that is what you've got to do. Am I surprised that Amazon Prime haven't got into it? Absolutely. That's next. Now, I don't know who that will be. My money, maybe a few years ago, might have been on TNA. I don't think it is now. I don't know who that will be. I'm half expecting Jeff Bezos and Amazon to fund their own wrestling promotion, because then the costs are even less, right? You own the product. You haven't got to worry about negotiations for copyright, for right renewal. It's yours. You bring the talent in. They would have the money to bring the best roster in. That is when you have a competition, because then you've got Amazon versus Netflix. You've got the Amazon wrestling promotion versus the WWE. And this is as close to a Netflix buyout of WWE as I think we're ever going to get. And you're all looking at me going, well, yeah, you're talking out your backside, man. Am I? Because when the WWE was being up for sale before RE and Endeavour got it, Netflix was one of the players that were interested in buying it. Netflix have now got this 10-year deal worth billions. Netflix are going to have a say in the product. We're already seeing that. So if Amazon get involved and Max get involved, which they've done with AEW, you have got the three-way war. And I think this is where it will get interesting, because this will be the wrestling war of the 2025. Will be AEW on Max versus Amazon Prime and whatever wrestling promotion they decide to do versus Netflix and the WWE. Global Supremacy. Who will win the battle? I do not know, but my money is on the WWE. I hope that as streaming continues, the one thing that I worry about with streaming is that there'll be so much product going out there that it will become diluted. So even though I said earlier on about a women's brand on Netflix, I kind of hope that happens. I'm concerned that SmackDown's going 3 hours. If I'm honest, I'm concerned that Raw's going back to 3 hours because I quite like the 2-hour format. NXT, I hope for God you stay at 2 hours, because I can't handle another 3 hours of you. And if they brought the women's brand in, please keep it to 1 or 2. So already you've got a lot of content, which has always been the problem with professional wrestling. But not having to worry about that rights deal gives them the scope to do more, which could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. But my prediction, as I said, is Amazon versus Netflix versus Max in 2025, AEW versus WWE versus one other to be announced promotion. How good would that be if that was Scott D'Amore in Maple Leaf? That would be tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. All right, how are we getting on? Here's a couple of quick ones. What are your favorite wrestling catchphrases? And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. Ooh, yeah! There you go. That's my two favorite ones. Who is your favorite wrestling commentator of all time? Wow. All right. Who is my favorite wrestling commentator of all time? There isn't one. Okay, so here is the top 5 in no particular order. Number 5, Jim Ross. The voice of our era. The voice of the World Wrestling Federation. The voice of the Attitude Era. To a degree, the voice of AEW. Jim Ross called some of the biggest matches ever and some of the moments that we go back on and look at. Jim Ross is not Jim Ross now, right? Let's be frank. Jim Ross needs to step back. And I love Jim Ross, and I've spoken to him a few times. If I can find one of the old interviews out, I'll put it up on the feed. He is a great mind. He is a genuinely nice guy. He has got such a talent for this business. But his time has been. He needs to move on now. His calling is nowhere near as good as what it was. Number 5, Jim Ross. Number 4, Jesse the Body Ventura. The 80s, early 90s, you couldn't watch a pay-per-view for the World Wrestling Federation without having Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura, right? And that was your original 1-2 punch. And Jesse just had this over-the-top, charismatic way of delivering a line, discussing a match. He was the 5-star color commentator before 5-star color commentators were cool. And when you play that off, that stoic Gorilla Monsoon deadpan delivery, it just worked, and it was gold. And I remember my first pay-per-view was WrestleMania 3 from the Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit, Michigan, where it was, my first time ever hearing Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura on commentary, and I instantly fell in love with the pair of them. I thought they were brilliant. And that soundtrack is my generation of professional wrestling. So that's Jim Ross. That is Jesse Ventura. Number 3, love him or loathe him, Vince McMahon. Not going to spend time on it. Vince McMahon, I mean, he's just got that iconic voice, right? And he called, again, some of those biggest moments. I remember 1994 when he came out and he cut the promo about the Macho Man no longer being with the World Wrestling Federation, or the boyhood dream has come true for Shawn Michaels, that iconic line that we still hear. He had that ability to put a match over because that's how he wanted it to be put. Number 2, Gorilla Monsoon. Oh, Gorilla. Gorilla was brilliant. That's why I use him at the top of the show every week. It's time to step into the squared circle and get it done. For those of you who haven't followed me in podcasting, that clip, it's time to step in the squared circle and get it done, was on the original TSC, and it followed us through a lot of the different shows that we did, because both Lee and I were huge fans of Gorilla and the moments. And that clip is taken from the countdown to WrestleMania 6, the show they did on Superstars prior to the pay-per-view. And that will always mean a lot to me. And he will always mean a lot to me because, again, the voice of my generation, the voice of my soundtrack. Number 1, who would always be my number 1 for managers, Bobby the Brain Heenan. I mean, the Weasel was great at ringside. He was great behind the booth. The one-liners he would come out with, the way he would antagonize the play-by-play, the way he would antagonize the workers, the way he would take the mick out of them, the way he would tell a story, the way he would call a match, the humor, the passion, the fun was the Brain. I do remember, however, Bash at the Beach 96, WCW, where he basically let the cat out of the bag that Hogan was the third man. I did pop. I did laugh. I thought Bischoff was going to rip you apart when you got back to the back. But it was brilliant. With the right partner for him, he shone. And that right partner was Gorilla Monsoon. He never fitted, I don't think, well with Tony Schiavone. Apparently there's no love lost. There was no love lost between those two. But yeah, that's my top 5. Jim Ross, Jesse Ventura, Vince McMahon, Gorilla Monsoon, and The Brain. Bobby Heenan, honorable mention, of course, to Jerry the King Lawler. They could have been more. Mauro Ranallo could have been in that list, but they were the top ones. All right, how are we getting on with these questions? Going to do a couple more. Most likely, I've lost how many we've done. We might have done 10. We might not. I don't know. Let's have a look at what have we got. What have we got? Who are the next generation of superstars? Bron Breakker. We're seeing that already. Solo Sikoa. Once Reigns is out the way, it's definitely Solo. I'm with Joe, though. I'm sick to the back teeth of this Bloodline story. Get it finished. Solo Sikoa. Cora Jade from NXT. Tiffany Stratton from SmackDown, which we've already talked about. From AEW, I'm a bit out of the loop with AEW at the moment. Sammy Guevara with a decent push and some decent character work could be big. Daniel Garcia, obviously. And I think he's already there in a way. But Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF. I mean, he is going to break boundaries. But I think the problem with MJF is AEW. I think he needs to be in the WWE. If he's in the WWE and Hunter lets him go, yeah, there's no stopping this dude. Mic work, in-ring ability, absolutely brilliant. There's going to be others that I can't think of at the moment. I think everybody's expecting me to say Nikita Lyons because they all know I'm a big Nikita Lyons fan, but I'm not going to do that. Bron Breakker, Cora Jade, Tiffany Stratton, Sammy Guevara, Anna Jay. I love Anna Jay. I think Anna Jay is a great worker. I can't think. Kylie Ray. That's the one from the WWID. Kylie Ray. There we go. Cool. Blimey, this is hard. I think Swerve is already there. But they keep developing Swerve. He will make it massive. Jay White. I worked with Jay White when he was first breaking in back here down south in the UK. To see where he's come from has been amazing. I need to think about that one. Let me know on Team MLW what you think. Who is the next breakout? Who is the next future of professional wrestling? From any company. I'd love to know your thoughts. All right, let's do one more and then let's wrap it up because we are hoping to do this again with some of Team MOW. Who's favorite done that one? What is wrestling theme song? All right, the role of video games. How did wrestling video games evolve and impact fan engagement? I'm going to change that one slightly just because I haven't got time to really go into that question in that detail. But wrestling video games are so instrumental in keeping the legacy and the interest in the product, right? I still go back to WWF No Mercy on the N64. Brilliant game. Love it. I still go back to SmackDown. Still go back to SmackDown 2. Still go back to Here Comes the Pain and Shut Your Mouth. Two of the greatest PlayStation 2 titles. The problem, I think, is, and it's always been the same, the use of DLC is a good model because it means it keeps it up to date. But because the game takes about 9 months to a year to develop, the roster is so out of date that it's almost not worth buying it because it's just like the FIFA franchise or the EA Sports franchise, Madden franchise. Next year another one's coming out. There's a part of me that would be like, do the game as a base game and then do it as a season and like next season do the update So you've bought the base game. They won't do that because the revenue is too high. I mean, you talk about money spinners and money generation. The video games are huge. I mean, they play a massive part in the bottom line of the company. I think 2K, it's about time 2K stepped aside. Don't know who could pick it up. It needs fresh blood. Contrary to what people think, I actually quite enjoyed Fight Forever, the AEW one. Controls were absolutely diabolical. And they suffered because of the long length it took them to develop it and bring it out. No one's playing it now, which is such a shame. It had potential to be a really good game, and it didn't. We'll do a whole show on video games coming up very soon. All right, that's it for this week's Legends and Champions. Slightly different one. Ask Us Anything from ChatGPT. We will be doing this again, and I'm hoping to bring on some of the Team MOW presenters to do it with me. So you'll get a bit of back and forth. We'll pick most likely 4 or 5 questions and go that route. Stay tuned to us on MOW this week, because on the Saturday it's the ACT boys, Mitch hopefully and Dimitri back with another week of the Greek World Order. Then on Sunday Mike will be here with Maguire on Wrestling, the usual stuff coming out of that, the 5 count, Wrestling Observer Live, and a whole lot more. You can listen to us on all good main podcast providers by going to Maguire on Wrestling, or you can visit maguireonwrestling.com for all the latest information and to find out more about us. And you can chat to us right here, right now, in real time, alongside the MOW community at Team MOW on Facebook. There's a little vetting that we do just to make sure only the right people come in. And we have no problems. It's very quick. Mike will approve you, ask you a couple of questions, in you come, and off you go. Have some fun. And we will be back next week with more Legends and Champions right here at Team MOW. Until then, I will see you next week. See you at the matches. Bye-bye now.
This has been Legends and Champions with Andy Evans. Thank you for listening.